So thank you very much, Asaf. So welcome.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me and inviting me to this nice festival. I know some of you, and some of you I don't know. For the ones of you whom I know, then some of the things at least at the beginning, yeah, would repeat themselves. So I already gave some kind of introduction like that in my course in Oxford. So maybe at the beginning you will be a little bit bored, yeah. But then afterwards we're going to do some interactive things. So bear with me. So our session today is going to focus on Judeo-Arabic. Now, I cannot speak on behalf of all the dialects of Judeo-Arabic. Yeah? Judeo-Arabic is a very, very diversified term. Yeah, so there are many dialects under Judeo-Arabic, which are very different from each other. So what I'm going to focus on is the case of Baghdad, so the Jewish dialect of Baghdad. Maybe I will say a few additional words about Jewish dialects in Iraq in general, but that will be it. Yeah. Another thing that I want to say in this respect is that I'm not going to talk about literary Judeo-Arabic. Yeah. So Judeo-Arabic as a written language, which was mostly used for religious purposes. Yeah. So translations of the Bible or of prayers or of Haggadah Shel Pesach and things like that. I'm going to focus on the spoken Jewish dialect of Baghdad, as it was spoken more or less in the past 100 years. Yeah. So that will be the focus of our talk today. And just to open the session and to give a little bit of context, we need to say a few words about the history of the Jews of Iraq in general. And our story starts more or less 2,500 years ago, when the kingdom of Judea was destroyed by the Babylonian Empire and Jerusalem was conquered. The first temple was demolished, and the Jewish population, yeah, I'm not sure that they knew that they were Jews back then, yeah, but they were exiled to Babylon. Now the exile to Babylon, the Babylonian exile, is described as a national disaster. Yeah, if you read Psalms, for example, we all know the quote, "By the rivers of Babylon, we sat and wept when we remembered Zion." Yeah, so that was a traumatic event in the history of these people. But slowly, we know that they established community life in Babylon. They had their autonomy, they had the rich culture, and Babylon basically became the biggest Jewish center in the world back then. And it was the center of biblical interpretation, where the Babylonian Talmud was edited. So both spiritually and culturally, it was a very important Jewish center back then. Now we jump forward to 762, the year in which Baghdad was established as the capital of the Abbasid Empire. Yeah, so it was a very, very important, the central maybe city in the Muslim world back then. Now, during that time, Baghdad was home to the biggest Jewish community in the region. And actually, the time of the Abbasid Empire is the golden ages of the Jewish presence in this region, probably. So everything went well until the Mongols came and conquered the region in 2 waves of conquest, which we don't need to get into details in this regard. But basically, after the conquest, Baghdad was destroyed, yeah, and it slowly became a town even back then. So it wasn't as important as it used to be. And also the Jews of Baghdad probably scattered all over the world. Yeah, maybe not all over the world, but into different places in Mesopotamia at least, and probably also as far as Aleppo in modern day Syria. So Baghdad was not as important as it used to be in the past, and slowly declined. It went back to be a central place during the Ottoman Empire time, and especially in the 18th and 19th century. One important detail about the Jewish community of Iraq and Baghdad is that small Jewish Baghdadi communities started to get established also in the Far East, in places like India and Singapore and China, so Shanghai and Hong Kong and Mumbai and Kolkata and places like that. These small Jewish Baghdadi communities were established by rich Baghdadis who moved to the Far East to do trade. Yeah, so they were businessmen, and what they managed is trade companies that controlled the trade from the Far East through the Persian Gulf, along the Euphrates and the Tigris, up north to Syria, Turkey, and from there to Europe. So basically cities like Basra, Baghdad, Aleppo were right in the middle of the trade route, of a very important trade route that was partly controlled by Jewish businessmen. And actually Jewish money contributed a lot to the prosperity of the region back then. Yeah, so Jews were a central part of the trade in that period. And basically Iraq owes a lot of its economic development back then to the Jews, yeah, as well as the knowledge and talent of these people. The British mandate at the beginning of the 20th century has also opened the door for the political participation of Jews in the political life in Iraq. So, for example, back then, the Minister of Economy, the finance minister, was a Jew, yeah? And it wasn't an issue at the beginning of the 20th century. Slowly, it did become an issue, and it opened the political participation of Jews, opened an anti-Jewish, I would say, atmosphere that got to its climax in 1941, when a very traumatic event, which is called the Farhud, took place. It was a Shavuot Eve in Baghdad, mainly in Baghdad, but also in other cities in Iraq. And this riot, yeah, or pogrom against the Jews started. And during the period of 2 days in June 1941, 179 Jews were murdered, more than 2,000 were injured, and of course property was looted. And as I said, this was a very traumatic event that is still alive in the memory of people who are still alive, all people who experienced this event. And this event, in combination with the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, has opened the door to the mass immigration of Jews from Iraq to Israel, but not only to Israel, of course, to other parts of the world, the UK, the US, Canada, Australia, and other places around the world, but mainly to Israel. And in 1950-1951, the Operation Ezra Venehemiah was conducted by the State of Israel. In this operation, I would say 90% of the Jews of Iraq left the country to Israel during these 2 years. Now, the rest of the Jews, I would say around maybe 7,000, 8,000 Jews that remained, most of them left at the beginning of the 70s. So after Saddam Hussein came into power in Iraq, again, the situation started to become insufferable for the Jews there, and slowly, slowly, the rest of them left. So in 1970s, 1971, and even later on, 1975, 4, etc. The situation is such that today, the estimation says that there are 3 Jews in Iraq who live undercover. All of them are old, and basically that's the end of the story of very, very prosperous Jewish community that lived in this region for 2,500 years. So that's tragic, of course, but this is what we see. Yeah. Now, this was a little bit of historical background. Now let's move on to talk about the language itself. So we cannot talk about Judeo-Arabic without saying something about Arabic in general. Yeah. And this map of the Arabic speaking world can show you how diversified it is. Yeah. So each color in this map represents a dialect family, an Arabic dialect family. And the dialects that are spoken in this edge of the Arabic speaking world are very different from the ones spoken in this edge of the Arabic speaking world. So if a person from Iraq, yeah, doesn't have to be a Jew, yeah, a Muslim from Iraq, speaks in their dialect with a person from Morocco, they would probably not understand each other. Maybe a word here, a word there, but not much more than that. The dialects are so different from each other that it's they are basically unintelligible. The same goes for a person from Iraq and a person from Yemen. Yeah. So again, these dialects are extremely different from each other. Now, Jewish dialects, Judeo-Arabic, the different dialects of Judeo-Arabic are also very different from each other. So the Jews in Morocco spoke Judeo-Arabic dialect that is similar to Moroccan Arabic, and the Jews of Iraq spoke dialect that is similar to Iraqi Arabic. Yeah, so there is no such a thing as one Judeo-Arabic. Yeah, it's not one language. A Jew from Iraq wouldn't understand a Jew from Morocco even 300 years ago. Yeah, unless they speak maybe Hebrew. Hebrew was the maybe lingua franca for them if they knew Hebrew, but definitely not Judeo-Arabic. Yeah. So the dialects were and still are very, very different. Also, when we are talking about Judeo-Arabic, yeah, spoken Judeo-Arabic. So, and if we zoom into the region that we are interested in today, so Iraq, or what we call Mesopotamia. Yeah, so Mesopotamia is the ancient name for the region that corresponds to the basin of the Euphrates and the Tigris rivers. Yeah, so it's not only Iraq today, Iraq that we know today, but also parts of Syria, the southern part of Turkey, Kuwait, and even parts of Iran. Yeah. So in this region, a type of Arabic that we call Mesopotamian Arabic is spoken, and Mesopotamian Arabic can be also broken into 2 branches of dialects. One that you see here in a green color, and here in the south in the blue color. These are 2 different branches of Mesopotamian Arabic that are very different from each other. Yeah, I would just mention that the northern one is called Kcra dialects. You can see here the name, and the southern one, the blue one, is called Gilit dialects. Now, if we look at a city like Baghdad, yeah, in Baghdad, there, let's say at the at the 40s of the previous century. Three different dialects were spoken, each one by a different religious group. So the Jews spoke differently than the Christians, who spoke differently from the Muslims. Yeah, so three different dialects were spoken in the city. And the Jewish dialect of Baghdad and the Christian dialect of Baghdad both are of a Qultu type, whereas the Muslim dialect of Baghdad is of a Gilit dialect type. So basically, you can say that the Jewish Baghdadi and Christian Baghdadi were quite similar to each other. Yeah, they had a lot of shared features, and they would have been mutually intelligible. Yeah, but the Muslim dialect of Baghdad was from an entire different family of dialects. Yeah, and it was very, very different, as we shall see in a minute. Yeah, so this situation, extreme situation of dialect diversity in one city, is not very common in the Arabic-speaking world. Yeah, but it is the case it was the case in Baghdad. Yeah, and as I mentioned, the Qultu dialects are the ones in the north. Now, if we look at Baghdad, this city here in the center, then it is surrounded by a Gilit speaking area, yeah, a region. Yeah, so basically the Jews and the Christians of Baghdad, both of them spoke a dialect that was, I would say, unrepresentative of their environment in general. Yeah, so they were an island of Qultu speaking dialects within a Gilit speaking region. Yeah, and if we want to talk about the differences between the Jewish dialect of Baghdad and the Muslim dialect of Baghdad, so a Qultu dialect and a Gilit dialect, so this is a very small representation of the differences, and I'm not going to go into, you know, the linguistic details of that, but I will just read these pairs of words that mean the same, yeah, in the two dialects, and you can very quickly see that the differences are very, very significant. So the word he said in the Jewish dialect of Baghdad is qal. In the Muslim dialect is gal. So qa and ga. The word he was is kan in the Jewish dialect of Baghdad, but chan in the Muslim dialect of Baghdad. So ka versus cha. The word he went is rah with ra, like Israeli or French ra in the Jewish dialect of Baghdad, but rah with a trill, ar, in the Muslim dialect of Baghdad. So ra versus ra. The word for mosque is jima versus jama. So e versus a. The word for black, suda versus soda. Yeah. So both the stress is somewhere else, and also the vowels differ. Yeah. So u versus o. The word for big, yeah, feminine singular big, kbiri versus chabira. Yeah. So again, you can see here the ka and cha, and the ra and ra, and also the final vowel e versus a. Kbiri, chabira. The word his suit, bidlitu versus badilta. Yeah, bidlitu, badilta. Very, very different. The word for here, honi versus hna. The word for thus or so, hekev versus hichi. Yeah, so very, very different dialects, both in their sound system, in their morphology, in their syntax, were spoken in the city. Now, just a quick word about other dialects, Jewish dialects in Iraq. So the Jewish dialect of Baghdad that you can see here in red, yeah, versus the Muslim dialect of Baghdad that you can see here in blue, is only one of them. Yeah, so Other Jewish dialects were spoken in Iraq. So, for example, the Jews of Heat, yeah, they were Kcraite Jews, and they spoke another dialect, a Qiltu dialect as well, but another dialect. The Jews of Ana, the city that Tamara mentioned that I am investigating right now, they spoke another Qiltu dialect. The Jews of Kirkuk, of Erbil, of Mosul, of cities like Mardin in South Turkey, Diyarbakir, Nusaybin, Qamishli. Yeah, so all these dialects that you see here scattered on the map are basically Jewish Qiltu dialects. Yeah, and you can see different colors here. So red color, this bluish color, green color, yellow, and here also in Aleppo, this purple or pink. They stand for different branches within the Qiltu family. So Qiltu dialects are also quite diversified, and you can find a lot of differences within this family as well. So these different colors correspond to these differences between branches within the Qiltu dialect. So also, it's not the case that the Jews of Iraq spoke one Jewish dialect. It's far from being the truth, yeah? So the Jews of Baghdad spoke very, very, very differently from the way the Jews of Ana spoke, yeah? And also the Jews of Mosul spoke differently from the Jews of Baghdad. So there was a lot of diversity also within Judeo-Arabic, the Judeo-Arabic of Iraq. Now, just to complete the picture, I want to discuss how come this diversity in Baghdad specifically, yeah? One very extreme one Muslim dialect and one Jewish dialect that are extremely different from each other. How did this situation, how this situation come about? So what happened? What's the historical background of that? So the issue is that actually the Jews and the Christians of Baghdad who speak a Qiltu dialect, yeah, they speak a dialect that is basically representative of the dialect that was spoken in general in Baghdad in the Middle Ages. Yeah. So up until the Mongol conquest of Baghdad, the type of dialect that was spoken in Baghdad and entirely in Iraq was a Qiltu type dialect. Yeah. The Gilit type dialects that are spoken by the Muslims of Baghdad today are actually dialects that were brought to Baghdad later on in the 17th century, yeah, by Bedouins who came to the city once it was urbanized again, yeah. So it was reurbanized in the 17th century, and with this process of reurbanization, Bedouins from the rural areas came into the city. And when they came into the city, they came with their own dialect that was a Gilit type dialect. And slowly, they became the majority in the city. And as the majority, their dialect became the prestige dialect of the city. And this is how the dialects that were spoken by the Jews and by the Christians became dialects of minorities. So within their houses, within their communities, the Jews and the Christians kept on speaking their own native dialects, yeah? But this dialect of the city was already a Gilit type dialect, yeah? So when we are talking about the Jewish dialect of Baghdad and we are researching this Jewish dialect of Baghdad, we are basically opening a window to how Arabic was spoken in Baghdad probably 1,000 years ago. Yeah, this is why these dialects, Qiltu dialects in general, are so important for the research of Arabic dialectology in general. Yeah, because they have a lot of archaic features that are very, very interesting for the historical linguistic, from the historical linguistic perspective. Yeah. So that's the historical background. Now let's look into the Jewish dialect of Baghdad a little bit.
Asaf, maybe if someone has questions about what you just explained,
Sure.
maybe it will be a good time to, before we go to the other part. Does anybody have a question or a comment? Yes. So Levana, Bite. Yes, Levana, you have to unmute yourself. Yeah.
I'm really very, very interested in what you're saying because well, I was born in Egypt, but 3 of my grandparents came from Baghdad. So I'm directly concerned. But so you see, they emigrated. Now, this was very, very common in Egypt, as you probably know. That can't compare at all with the long tradition of the Baghdadi situation and Iraqi situation. And it's about that I wanted to ask you. Is there an influence, a linguistic influence about, let's say, movement, immigration, or imported elements? Because the way you describe it, it seems to be a very static society, a very static community throughout the centuries. And I'm a bit not surprised, but it's ever so different from Egypt. It's, well, fascinating. But I want a bit to know a bit more about that.
Okay, that's an excellent question. And one that is very dear to me as well, personally. So I cannot say much about Egypt because I didn't look into that a lot. Yeah, I do know that there are features in the Jewish dialect of Cairo, for example, that are unlike the dialects of Egypt in general, but they do share some common features with dialects like Baghdad and Aleppo. Yeah, so I'll give one just as an example. Probably most of you would not understand what I'm saying, but for those of you who are into that, maybe it would say something. So prepositions like under, yeah, which is pronounced as Jawwa in the Jewish dialect of Baghdad, yeah, or inside Jawwa, under or inside. They have sometimes suffixes in Jewish dialects. So instead of Jawwa, Jawwat, yeah. Instead of ben, between, benat, yeah. So this is quite a feature that is common, I would say, in Mesopotamian Arabic, but it is uncommon in Egypt, not at all. But in the Jewish dialect of Egypt, you find this feature. So what does this mean? Probably it is an indication of some contact, yeah, between Jews in Baghdad and Jews in Cairo, yeah. But as I said, I didn't look much into Cairo. A dialect that I did investigate is the Jewish dialect of Aleppo, and in between the Jewish dialect of Aleppo, by the way, belongs to an entirely different family of dialects. So I focused on Mesopotamian dialects so far, but in the Levant, in Syria, in Lebanon, and in Palestine, Israel, you have a different family of dialects, which is called Levantine dialects. Yeah, they are very different from Mesopotamian Arabic, but still in the Jewish dialect of Aleppo, you find a lot of features that you cannot find in other Levantine dialects. However, some of these features can be found in the Jewish dialect of Baghdad, and vice versa. In the Jewish dialect of Baghdad, you find some features that do not correspond to Mesopotamian Arabic, but can be found in Aleppo, in the Levant. So if you look at these features and you look at the history, the Jewish history of the region, especially after the Mongol conquest, of the region, you can assume that something happened, yeah, between these two cities and these two cities, Jewish communities. So after Baghdad was basically destroyed, yeah, and if you look at the history books and the descriptions of what happened to Baghdad after the Mongol conquest, you can see that the city was destroyed. There were even descriptions of the Tigris being red, yeah, because of blood, yeah, running red because of so much blood in the city, yeah. And the question arises, where did all these Jews go? Yeah, so if the city was abandoned and there was a huge Jewish community there, where did they go after the city was abandoned? So maybe the answer is that some of them went to Aleppo, yeah? And we do know there are historical records of strong connections between the Jewish community in Aleppo and Baghdad, yeah? So marriages between families in Aleppo and Baghdad, also spiritual relationship. So for example, for a period of time in Baghdad, they couldn't find a chief rabbi, somebody that could be the chief rabbi. And they brought a chief rabbi from Aleppo, yeah? So also when there were plagues in Baghdad, so we know that because of the rivers, there were periods of plague in Baghdad, in which again, many people left the city. And we know that during this period, Jews from Baghdad went to Aleppo, yeah? So probably these things, these historical movements and migrations also influence the way these two communities spoke, yeah? And this is why we find features, common features in both these dialects. Now, whether this is also the case in Cairo, whether that happened in Cairo, so I can say basically maybe, but probably to a lesser extent. So these two communities were in very strong contact between them because of the rivers, yeah, because of the Euphrates. That Euphrates doesn't flow in Baghdad, but it's very close, yeah, and this was a part of the trade route, yeah. And so this is why we have strong connections, also linguistic connections between these two cities and communities. Now, what happened with Cairo? Probably to a lesser extent, and if yes, probably as a result of Aleppo, and maybe not of Baghdad, because Aleppo and Cairo were much more connected, yeah, back then. But it doesn't exclude the fact that there might also be connection with Baghdad, and families from Baghdad left to Cairo, definitely, yeah. So that's the answer for your question.
Great, thank you so much, Asaf, and thank you very much, Levana, for your question. I do have a question, a quick one, I hope. And if anybody else has a question, please raise your hand and go ahead. I'll tell you to ask the question. My question is, in Mexico, there are two big, like I will say, very big Jewish communities from Syria who started as a single community and then fought. And it's the community of Damascus, the Halevis, and from Aleppo, the Halevis, and the Shamis from Damascus. And I wanted to ask if you think that both Judeo-Arabic dialects were very different, or they were similar, or it was like a quick question, because it's really interesting how the Yiddish-speaking community founded one single community, whereas the Shamis and Halevis decided to found like two different and separate communities.
Yeah, so dialect-wise, they were very similar, but still different, yeah? So the same way that you can say that the Jews of Baghdad and the Jews of Mosul have very similar dialects, you see the same color, yeah, red here, but still there are distinctive features. These features, I would say, are would not prevent one from understand the other, yeah? So the same in Aleppo and in Damascus. So we know that because for the Jews of Aleppo, we have a very nice description of the dialect, a PhD that was written about it, and also about the Jews of Damascus. There is a PhD that was written about. So we know that there are differences, but again, not extreme differences that make it unintelligible, yeah, and not nothing to cause a fight between these two communities that probably the language was of the reason. This is for sure, I would say.
Great, thank you so much, Asaf. And since we don't have other questions for the moment, maybe it will be time to get a little bit of hands-on into the language. So the purpose of the festival is also for us to take a couple of words home or something like that. So I think now, Asaf, if I'm correct, you're going to be teaching us a couple of things in Judeo-Arabic. Is that correct?
Right.
So for that, what I want to ask you is to get involved. Let's use the great advantage that we're here on the internet and we can mute ourselves and try to repeat those words. So you get a little bit of you are actually saying those words in Judeo-Arabic. Thank you so much, Asaf.
Yeah, so before we go on to some expressions, I want to say a few words about Jewish languages and the Jewish dialect of Baghdad as a Jewish language. Yeah, so Tamara already mentioned that there are common features between different Jewish languages. Yeah, so definitely Yiddish and the Jewish dialect of Baghdad are not the same language. Yeah, but there are features that we can see cross Jewish languages. Yeah, one of these features is Hebrew and Aramaic elements. Yeah, so some words, expressions whose origin is Hebrew or Aramaic. So these are a few examples from the Jewish dialect of Baghdad. For example, the word luck, mizal, yeah, mizal. And this really sounds similar to the word mazal in Hebrew. The word commandment, muswa, yeah, muswa, with this sa, which is stronger than just sa, yeah, muswa. So like mitzvah in Hebrew. The word for Passover, shetacha, yeah, this is actually a word of Aramaic origin. So some of you probably know that when we read the Passover Agadah, yeah, there is one of the most important passages there is Halachmaniya, yeah, and in this passage, which is basically in Aramaic, you have a phrase there saying Hashata hacha, yeah, which translates into this year, yeah. The passage says, this year we are here, next year we'll be in Jerusalem, yeah, hopefully we'll be in Jerusalem. So this phrase from Aramaic, Hashata hacha, this year, actually was coined as the name for Passover in the Jewish dialect of Baghdad. So the name for Passover is actually of Aramaic origin, shetacha, yeah, and it literally means this year, yeah, out of this passage. Another Aramaic example is the word barbenan, yeah, God forbid. This comes from, again, from Aramaic, bar minan, yeah. So bar means the son of, or one who possesses the characteristics of, and minan means deaf, yeah. So bar minan literally means one who possesses the characteristics of death, yeah, which means somebody who is about to die or is dead or something like that. So barbenan is the Judeo-Arabic version of that in Baghdad, and it doesn't mean anymore, it doesn't have to do with death anymore. It just means something equivalent to God forbid in English. And not only words were adopted into the Jewish dialect of Baghdad, but also grammatical constructions, complete grammatical constructions were adopted. So for example, this grammatical construction of object marking is definitely Aramaic. Yeah, it looks like Aramaic, it is Aramaic, and it doesn't exist basically in classical Arabic or other dialects of Arabic. There are, of course, other dialects of Arabic in the Levant and in Mesopotamia where this construction exists because of Aramaic substrate. Yeah, so the Aramaic was the lingua franca of this region for thousands of years. Yeah, not only for the Jews but also for Christians and before the Arab conquest. Yeah, the Arabic conquest. So there are Aramaic features not only in Jewish languages, in Jewish Arabic languages, but also in others. So this construction, akalul tafah, yeah, literally means he ate it to the apple. Yeah, he ate the apple. He ate it to the apple. So this doubling of it and apple, yeah, double reference to the object, and the use of the preposition to, he ate it to the apple, is very, very Aramaic. Yeah. Now another issue that has to do with Jewish languages is the fact that they were used sometimes as secret languages. Yeah. So this is also true for the Jewish dialect of Baghdad. When Jews felt in danger, or they wanted to talk about things that they wouldn't want the Muslim neighbors around them to know, they would use the Jewish dialect as a secret language. Another feature is the existence of archaic elements. Yeah, so I already mentioned that in the case of the Jewish dialect of Baghdad, that basically it opens a window to how Arabic was spoken 1,000 years ago. Yeah, and you can see that in the name that was given to this family of dialects, qiltu dialects. So this qa sound at the beginning of the word qiltu is a very archaic feature. Most of the dialects of Arabic in the Arabic-speaking world do not say qa anymore. They either say a instead or ga. Yeah. So qa is a very, very archaic element. Also, the ending to for the first person in the past, I did something, is very archaic. It already disappeared for most of the Arabic dialects in the Arabic-speaking world. So these are examples of two archaic features that qiltu dialects still preserve. Another feature is the use of Hebrew alphabet, but of course only in the literary language. Yeah, and here you can see an example from, again, the Agadah of Pesach. This passage, Manishtana, which is very, very famous, is written here in Hebrew. Yeah, but here underneath, you can see the Judeo-Arabic translation of this passage. Yeah, bimat ghayrat hadi lela min kulli yali. Now, this is Arabic, Judeo-Arabic. Yeah, written in Hebrew alphabet, like Yiddish, like Ladino, that were written in Hebrew alphabet. So the same for the Jewish dialect, for Judeo-Arabic, in this case, in literary Judeo-Baghdadi. And interestingly, not only the passages themselves were translated into Judeo-Arabic, but also the instructions. You know that in the Haggadah, you have instructions of how to prepare the seder and what to do when, and when to pour another glass, etc. So these instructions were written only in Judeo-Arabic. Yeah. So whereas the people were able to read that and understand because of tradition, yeah, that part in Hebrew, they definitely needed the instructions to be in Judeo-Arabic in order to understand them. So we can see here the instructions. For example, so pour a second glass and put it in front of you. Yeah, these instructions are also in Judeo-Arabic in Hebrew alphabet. And the last thing that is common for Jewish dialects or Jewish languages, and is also the case in the Jewish dialect of Baghdad, is social linguistic situation that we call Diglossia. Yeah, so Diglossia means di means do, double, yeah, and it means that the people spoke two different varieties of the language, one within the family or the community, and one outside of the community. Yeah. So this is also the case in the Jewish dialect of Baghdad that was spoken within the families or within the community. But once the Jews went outside of their community to the street or spoke to their Muslim neighbors, they spoke in the Muslim dialect of Baghdad. Yeah. So you can say that the Jews were bilingual in this respect. Yeah. They had their own native dialect at home, but they were, most of them were able to speak the Muslim dialect also fluently when they went outside of their house. Yeah. So this situation is called Diglossia, and it's not only the case in the Jewish dialect of Baghdad. Now some expressions. So I collected a few of them that are very, very common, and I will both read them out loud and give you the opportunity to repeat them yourself, and also explain some, I would say, cultural peculiarities around them. Yeah, how come these expressions are used and what they are about. Yeah, so the way you say "How are you" in the Jewish dialect of Baghdad is "Ashlonak" if you're referring to a masculine, or "Ashlonek" if you're referring to a feminine. Yeah, so you can try "Ashlonak" and "Ashlonek." Ashlonak, Ashlonek. And yeah, I see that somebody raised their hand. Anne, you want to ask something?
Yes, please. So I studied Arabic many years ago, and I have never understood why some speakers say shlonak or shlonik. It has no relation to kefahaduka and so on. So do you know anything about the etymology of this expression?
Oh, yeah. This is exactly what I'm going to talk about. So first of all, shlonak without the a at the beginning is very common in Mesopotamia in general. Yeah, so not only in the Jewish dialect of Baghdad. And for example, the Muslims of Baghdad say shlonak. Yeah, as well. This a at the beginning is definitely a characteristic of the Jewish dialect of Baghdad. So ashlonak, with the stress in the a. And the etymology of that, we are not really sure. Yeah. So lon means color. Yeah. And ash or sh, just sh, mean what? Yeah. So literally, this expression means what is your color? Now, what does color have to do with how are you is unclear. But there is, I would say, a popular etymology, folkloric etymology around that, that has to do with the plagues that I mentioned earlier. Yeah. So during the times of plagues, it is said that people used to change their color. Yeah. So their face would become red or something like that. And when somebody asks somebody else, "Hey, what's your color?" Yeah. It basically meant, how do you feel? Yeah. If your color was red, then you were probably sick or something like that. So this is the popular etymology of ashlonak. Yeah. What is your color? As an expression of how are you? And by extension or specifically, what is your color because of your disease? Yeah. Whether you caught the disease or not. Now, I'm saying this is popular etymology. This is probably not the truth. What the truth is and why color, the word color, became synonymous with the situation is basically exactly because of what I said right now. Because the word color, yeah, extended its meaning also to mean a situation. Yeah, so it didn't only mean color, it also meant situation. Yeah. So that's the case of that. Did I answer the question?
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, another very common expression when an expression of endearment, when you want to call somebody, yeah, that is dear to you, yeah, especially if you are a mother of children or a grandmother of children. This is very, very common. Doesn't have to be grandmother, can be grandfather. So an elder towards the younger generation. If you want to say darling or my darling or something like that, you would say bdalak for a masculine and bdalik for a feminine. Yeah, so bdalak and bdalik. Now, where does this expression come from? So badal, the root badal in Arabic means to replace. Yeah, so bdalak literally means I am replacing you. I am your replacement. Yeah, and where does this come from? It comes from the Jewish tradition of kaparot in Yom Kippur. Yeah, when a chicken is sacrificed in order to compensate for somebody's sins. Yeah, so you compensate your sins by sacrificing a chicken. Yeah, so this tradition, old tradition, is dying out in many, I would say, Jewish communities. It's still alive in the Orthodox communities in Israel, at least. So when somebody says, I am instead of you, yeah, I am replacing you, it means that I'm taking charge or I'm carrying your sins instead of you. Yeah. So this is what they mean when they say bdalak and dalek. Yeah. So I am willing to sacrifice my life and to take your sins upon me instead of you. Yeah. So this is the literal translation. Of course, with the years, it started to fade off. Yeah, this very religious meaning of that and very heavy, I would say, responsibility that you take upon yourself when you say something like that started to wear off. But yes, I remember that one time when I was a child, so my grandmother told me bdalak, yeah, so she said that all the time. But one time when she said that, I answered her and I told her bdalek, yeah, with, of course, with the feminine because she was my grandmother. And she was very angry. And she told me, you don't say that to your grandmother. Yeah. So in other words, I am allowed to say something like that to you because you are my grandson. Yeah. And I'm older than you and I can take your sins upon me, but you cannot do that to me. Yeah. You're too young for that. You cannot do that. Yeah. So this is the story of Dalek and Dalek. And actually it became synonymous with Iraqi in Israel. Yeah. So when you tell somebody you are Iraqi, so some of them will tell you, Abdalak. Yeah. So in Israel, everybody, not everybody, but many people know what it means, and it's like a synonym of being Iraqi. Another example is fidwa alek, and for feminine, fidwa aleki. Yeah, so it means basically the same, my darling or something like that. Again, told by the elder to a younger person. And also the etymology is quite the same. Yeah, so the root here is fadaw or fadai. Yeah, like the Hebrew word pidyon, if you know, lifdot, which means, again, to replace something by something else. Yeah, so whereas in this case, the word is badal, the root is badal, which is an Arabic root. In this case, the root is fadaw, yeah, which is basically goes back to a Hebrew root. So it has the same meaning, goes back to the same tradition of replacing somebody and taking somebody's sin upon myself. Just that the etymology here is Arabic and here it is Hebrew. Yeah, it's a Hebrew element in this dialect. Another example is andar madarak, or for a feminine, andar madarak. Yeah, so andar madarak. Andar madarak. This basically means, literally, it means I will spin around you. Yeah, again, it goes back to this tradition of kaparot. Yeah, because in kaparot, what you do is you sacrifice the chicken and you spin it above the head of the person that you want to, you know, to redeem from their sins. Yeah. So andar madarek is I will spin around you. I will be the chicken that is being sacrificed to give you atonement. Yeah. The same thing. So it goes back to the same cultural, I would say, source. And it basically means today I will do anything for you. Yeah. So it doesn't really need to be so serious. Yeah. It can be just it is said very easily. Yeah. On a daily basis. Another one is Ashti Dak. Yeah. Ashti Dak for a man, or Ashti Dak for a female. Yeah. So Ashti Dak, Ashti Dak. This is how you say, well done, good on you. Yeah. And literally it means may, yeah, in brackets, your hand, id is hand, like yad in Hebrew, live. Yeah. Ash means to live. Yeah. So may your hand live. Yeah, live. Yeah, meaning your hand, or what you did with your hands, is blessed. Yeah, you did so well with your hands. It is blessed, and I wish your hands to live for a long time. Yeah, so that's what it means, and this is basically on a daily basis. It just means well done. Yeah, well, so when somebody cooks something, and this something looks good and tasty, you tell them Ashti Dak. Yeah, or Ashti Dak. Meaning, may your hands live forever. Yeah, you're so talented with your hands. May they live forever. So we mentioned cooking something, and cooking and the cuisine is a very, very essential part of Jewish life in general, but also of the Jewish dialect of the Jews of Baghdad, the culture and life of the Jews of Baghdad. And one of the traditions, or one of the types of food that is very typical for the Jewish Iraqi cuisine is what is called kibba. Kibba, or it is basically, it means like a dumpling or a meatball or something like that. And here you can see different types of kibbas. So this is, here you can see how they are prepared. This is basically a meatball covered by different types of dough. So this dough can be made out of semolina, or out of bulgur, or out of flour, or out of rice, or out of potatoes. So there are different covers for these dumplings. Also different types of meatballs. It can be out of chicken, out of beef, out of sheep, yeah, whatever. Yeah, it can be many types, and of course the spices differ. And on top of all of that, you can either cook it within a soup, or either fry it or put it in the oven. And of course, different soups are also prepared. Yeah, so different salsas around it. So here you can see maybe the most famous one, which is red beet salsa or sauce. Here you can see pumpkin sauce. Here you can see okra sauce, which is also very, very common. So the different combinations of dough, type of meat, spices, type of cooking, frying or just boiling, and types of sauce give you a big variety of dishes that basically boil down to one essential type of food, yeah, which is the kubba. And this usually go along with rice or bread or something like that. So this is the Iraqi cuisine, the Jewish Iraqi cuisine, very briefly. Yeah, this is what it is about. And here I wrote one phrase about food. Yeah, ana ju'an mayyit. Yeah, ana ju'an mayyit, which means literally, I am hungry to death. Yeah, I'm so very hungry. So ana ju'an mayyit. Yeah, so mayyit, it's like mavet in Hebrew. Yeah, so those of you who know the word in Hebrew, mavet, this is the same root. Ana ju'an mayyit. And then what if you say something like that, you immediately hear tal kil or tali kili. Yeah, come eat. Yeah, immediately. If you say something like that, immediately the kitchen opens and somebody prepares a dish for you. So tal kil and tali kili, if you are willing. And this phrase here, qadaqillak, yeah, I am telling you, I just noted it because this is something that you hear a lot from when you hear a conversation with between Jews from Iraq. You hear qadaqillak, I am telling you, yeah, as if they are expressing, you know, I'm not lying to you. This is the truth. I'm telling you. And in this phrase, you hear two qas, yeah, qad aqillak, qa qad aqillak. And because this phrase is very, very common, and in general, the sound qa is very, very common in this dialect, unlike other dialects of Arabic. So this sound, this qa sound, became the most notorious feature of Iraqis in Israel. Yeah. So as I said, some people will tell you, oh, you're Iraqi bdalak. Yeah. So other people would say, oh, you're Iraqi, qa, 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 qa. Yeah, they will imitate this sound because it is so common in this dialect. So, qadaqillak. And to complete the picture, a few swear words, yeah, which are also very, very colorful. So one example is abel alek or abel aleki, yeah. So shame on you, masculine or feminine. And this abel comes from the Hebrew word evel, which means grief, yeah. So grief on you means shame on you, yeah. And you can see that this B and this L they have a dot, yeah. I mentioned a dot, I noted a dot underneath. This means that they are not simply B and L, but they are emphatic. They are B and L, yeah. So abuel, abuel. And this feature, this emphaticness that you can see here is usually is attributed to loan words. So when you loan a word from another language like Hebrew, in order to make it sound Arabic, you make some sounds emphatic. Yeah, so like abuel. Yeah, this way it would sound Arabic rather than Hebrew. Yeah, it would not sound foreign to the dialect. So abuel aleki. Now it sounds terrible. Yeah, grief on you sounds terrible, right? But again, with the years, the literal meaning of grief started to, you know, to wear out. So it simply means shame on you. You don't need to do something. You don't need to kill somebody for somebody to tell you abuel alek. Yeah, it can be a daily thing. You just broke a glass or something like that, and they will tell you abuel alek. Another example is the word rumad, yeah, which basically translates into an idiot or a loser or something like that, but it goes back to the word ash, yeah, so ashes. So If you are ash or ashes or something like that, you are an idiot or a loser. Again, if you ask them what it basically means, literally means, most of them will not be able to tell you, oh, it goes back to ashes, yeah? Because the meaning wore out. A very terrible thing is to say tfak or tfaki, yeah? Which means go to hell. This is quite a severe swear word, I would say. Literally, it means put you off, yeah, or extinguish you, yeah. And literally, usually this root tafa is said in relation to, you know, putting of a candle or something like that, yeah. But in this case, what they mean is, I hope God will turn you off, yeah, will terminate your life, yeah, in other words. So as if you were a candle. So this is what it means literally. And it is basically go to hell. It is quite serious also today. You will not say that to a friend of yours, or a family member, only to somebody that did something really wrong and you don't know, yeah, you don't know him. So this is tfak or tfaki. And if you just want to say that you're pissed off of the situation, you can just say nzul, nzul, which basically means plague, yeah? So this is the third time that we are talking about plagues. They are very important in the history of Baghdad in general and of the Jewish community of Baghdad. So plagues were very common and they were a disaster. And the word for plague is used nowadays just to describe your frustration of a situation. So we can say nzul, like, yeah. And this is the literary translation of that. Now, I want us to hear, yeah, some a little bit of the Jewish dialect of Baghdad. Before that, are there any questions?
I think Brenda had a question. Brenda, you wrote a really interesting question in the chat. Maybe you would like to ask it in person? Well,
okay.
Yes.
How can you write Judeo-Arabic with Hebrew characters when there's no Hebrew character for some of the Arabic connected sounds, such as a ch? And also, how would you distinguish between the two R, like, you know, the guttural R and the trilled R in Hebrew when there's only one R in Hebrew? How would you distinguish when you're writing Judeo-Arabic when the Hebrew language doesn't have the same sounds? I know we get around that in English various ways, but
yeah. So they invented some things, yeah. So they invented diacritics on top of existing Hebrew letters. So for example, ra, the ra sound was gimel with like an apostrophe on top of it, yeah. So the normal gimel was for ja, was preserved for ja, and gimel with apostrophe on top of it was ra, yeah. And there was no g. The g sound is basically a foreign sound for Arabic. Yeah, Arabic doesn't have the sound g. So that was a solution for ja, for ra. Now cha is a new sound. Yeah, it exists in the spoken dialect of Baghdad, of the Jews of Baghdad, but not really in the literary dialect of Baghdad. So for cha there wasn't any need. Yeah, so basically the solution was to add some diacritic points or symbols on top or under Hebrew letters, existing Hebrew letters. So they found their solution. Okay, other questions? Okay, so let's hear a little bit of the Jewish dialect of Baghdad. What we are going to hear is a story told by my grandmother. And for the sake of those who participated in my class in Oxford, I brought a new another story, yeah? So not the one that you already heard. So this is my grandmother and my grandfather. And here she's telling a story which I call the Jew and the jug, yeah? Lihudi with Tengai. Now, the way we're going to do that, you see here, you have the transliteration into Latin letters, yeah? And here you have the translation into English, yeah? So I think for the sake of this meeting, because we are not really focused on the, on learning this dialect, you can at least at first look at the English translation in order to grasp the idea, the story itself, yeah, what she's telling. And then if you want, we can go back again and hear and you can focus on the Arabic transcription, yeah? So let's start with the English translation so you can be familiar with the story itself.
هاي أكو كوما فد 4-5 جيل يهود كل شباط يدرسون جيوبهم حبغقي وأكو قحوة يروحون يقعدون بالقحوة قعدوا بالقحوة وأكو واحد عنده مطي يحمل علين وتنقيات يروح يبيعه هذا كل ما يمشي من هونيك يعينهم يقوم يسب اليهود ويشتم باليهود قعدوا بالقحوة قال لي هاكو واحد من القاعدين قال ما حد يطلع من حقه بالسنة اشتري شوي له قال له أنا ما أقول سوي الحكاية والتالي هذا جا قيت مندل يوم الشباط وقيسب ويشتم باليهود هذا حضر له أبغي جالي صب المطي انغزب بدانه بالأبغي هذا وجعته نغزة قوية وجعته قام يقمز نفض التنقيات كلها وقعها بالأرض راح هذا اشتكى علينا بالشرطة كان جابونه هذا أنت ليش كسرت له التنقيات قال له أنا ما كسرت التنقيات أنا رحت وشيتونه قلت له أنت إذا يهودي ابن يهودي مثل ما يقول عشان اليوم شباط عشان تشتغل يوم الشباط وهذا زعل ونفض الحمل ماله أنا إيش عندي بيها قالوا له دي خليه تاخذون ولاده أبو الزمال وطلعوا برا.
Yeah, so this is the story. Did you get it? Yeah, so basically there was a Muslim who insulted the Jews by calling them donkeys. Yeah, oh, you're a Jew, you're a donkey. And this Muslim had a donkey, yeah, to carry jugs for him. So one time, one of these Jews who felt insulted went and pricked the donkey in his ear, and this donkey, of course, it hurt him. So we shook off, and the jugs fell and crashed on the floor. And when they went to the police afterwards, the Jew told them, but I didn't do anything. I just went to the donkey and asked him, if you are a Jew like he says you are, because Jews are donkeys, then how come you're working on Saturdays? And this Jew got pissed off and threw the jugs, and they fell on the floor and crushed. Yeah, so it is like a Jewish folk story, I would say, that comes to describe a little bit the relationship between Jews, the tension between Jews and Muslims in Iraq back then. So this is just an example. Do you want to hear it again to focus more on the language, or it's fine?
Maybe if you want to hear it again, you can raise your hand, your electronic hand, or so we can.
Okay, so there is at least somebody who wants, so we'll hear that again. This time you can focus on the Arabic if you want. If not, you can read again the English.
هاي أكو كما فد 4-5 جيل يهود كل شباط يدرسون جيوبهم حب غقي وأكو قحوة يروحون يقعدون بالقحوة. قعدوا بالقحوة وأكو واحد عنده مطي يحمل علين وتنقيات يروح يبيعه. هذا كل ما يمشي من هونيك يعينهم يقوم يسب اليهود ويشتم باليهود. قعدوا بالقحوة. تلي هاكو واحد من القاعدين قال ما حد يطلع من حقه بالسنة. اشتري شوي له. قال له أنا ما أقول. سوي الحكاية والتالي. هذا جا يتمنى اليوم الشباط ويسب ويشتم باليهود. هذا حضر له أبغي جالي صب المطي انغزب بدانه بالأبغي. هذا وجعته نغزة قوية وجعته قام يقمز نفض التنقيات كلها وقعها بالأرض. راح هذا اشتكى علينا بالشرطة. كان جابونه هذا أنت ليش كسرت له التنقيات؟ قال له أنا ما كسرت التنقيات، أنا رحت وشيتونه. قلت له أنت إذا يهودي ابن يهودي مثل ما يقول عشان اليوم شباط عشان تشتغل يوم الشباط. وهذا زعل ونفض الحمل ماله. أنا إيش عندي بيها؟ قالوا له دي خليه تاخذون هذا أبو الزمال وطلعوا براءة.
Okay. So, questions? Comments? Okay. So, a few words about the future of the Jewish dialect of Baghdad and Jewish dialects in Iraq in general, and some initiatives of preservation and things like that. So unfortunately, the news are not very positive, because the Jewish dialect of Baghdad, like many other Jewish dialects, is going to die out in the coming few decades. Yeah. So basically, the reason for that is that there is no transmission of this language as a mother tongue inside the house from one generation to the other anymore. Yeah. So I would say the only Jewish language that will survive probably is Yiddish. Yeah. Where this language is still transmitted from parents to children inside their houses nowadays in many Jewish communities around the world. But this is not the case for the Jewish dialect of Baghdad or any other Arabic dialect spoken by Jews. Nonetheless, there are a lot of initiatives around the world that has to do with the preservation, documentation of this language and this culture. I would just mention some of them. Yeah, these are only a few examples. One is Facebook. Yeah, so Facebook groups like the one you can see here, משמרים את השפה העיראקית, or here, Amthal, basically in Israel, where the descendants of Jews who were born in Iraq, yeah, most of them were born already in Israel. They heard the language at home, and when they were children, they were told not to speak this language, yeah, because in Israel you should speak Hebrew, and they were ashamed of this language. But now, many, many decades afterwards, they realized that something was taken from them, and they are longing to hear this language again, to use this language again, and they are not ashamed anymore. And this is what they do in these groups. So they discuss words and expressions and proverbs, and they try to maintain discussions or tell jokes in this dialect. So this is one initiative. Another initiative is stand-up comedies. Yeah, so this guy, Kobi Pasha, is a stand-up comedian in Israel, and his entire show is in Judeo-Baghdadi. So you need to know Judeo-Baghdadi in order to participate and to understand. But when you do, it's very, very funny and colorful. Also, there are heritage centers around the world. One of them, only one of them, is in Or Yehuda in Israel, the Babylonian Jewry Heritage Center. They have a museum, a library, they host events. So this is a very important initiative. There are academic initiatives like collecting texts and recordings and writing grammars and writing dictionaries. So this is, for example, a dictionary for the Jewish dialect of Baghdad, written by Gila Yona. Very, very comprehensive one, although not academic, I would say, but very comprehensive, with a lot of examples, with appendixes of swear words and proverbs and things like that. So it's very good. This is a grammar written by me, yeah, a grammar of the dialects with grammar rules, yeah, and also texts. So, for example, the text that we heard right now of my grandmother is transcribed and translated in this book alongside with others. Also, the initiative that we mentioned at the beginning of the session of teaching Judeo-Arabic and other Jewish languages under the scope of the Oxford Center for Hebrew and Jewish Languages, which is very, very important and new. And there are other initiatives in terms of music, yeah. So, for example, an Israeli musician, Dudu Tassa, he is the grandson of Daoud Lequaiti, yeah, and Daoud Lequaiti was one of the most famous musicians in Iraq. By the way, not necessarily for the Jews, yeah, for the entire population, for the Muslim population as well. So he was one of the greatest musicians back then. Many of the most famous Iraqi music was written by him and his brother, Salah Lequaiti. And what Dudu Tassa did, Dudu Tassa is an Israeli singer. What he did is a tribute to his grandfather and uncle, and I mean, the brother of his grandfather. And he produced 2 albums, actually, with Iraqi music, with his own interpretation of that, mostly rock interpretation. And we will hear one example of that at the end of the session. And there are other initiatives like this one of Lulwa Khazum, yeah, Iraqis in Pyjama, again, a band that sings songs influenced by Judeo-Baghdadi, yeah. Sorry. Now we are going to move on to the next session, which is about proverbs, yeah.
Yeah. I just saw that Oded is now here with us. So Baruch haba, Oded, we're going to do this activity and then you will present to us. Asaf, should we do it here all together or in two different groups? What do you think?
How many are we here?
So we are 19.
No, so we can do that together.
Okay, perfect. And this is a very exciting part of our session, and we're going to require you to try to participate. So thank you. Yes.
Okay, so in this session, what we're going to do is we are going to talk about a few proverbs, or idioms from the Jewish dialect of Baghdad. And we are going to do that using a very nice book by an artist called Sigalit Shil in Israel. She worked very hard on collecting these idioms and proverbs from her parents. Yeah. And what she did is a book where she presents these idioms with their translation and transcription into Hebrew and also Arabic, as you can see. And also she added some drawing, to the idiom that might help people understand what it is about. So what we're going to do is I'm going to present to you these pictures with the Arabic transliteration. Under the transliteration, you can see a literal translation of the idiom, and then sorry, of the words themselves, and then also of the idiom. And what I would like you to do is to try to guess, by the picture and by the literal translation, what this idiom is about. So as an example, we'll take this one, baqa و مشدودة, which basically means a tied bundle of, in this case, parsley or something like that. But what do you think it means according to the picture and to the literal expression? If you read the Hebrew, you can see the solution here. But this is just an example. You will not see that in the rest of the slides. So what do you think it is?
A family?
Yeah, so a very unified family. Family where people treat each other very nicely and very well, and they are in good relations with each other. So a very unified family. So baqa و مشدودة. Now let's go to this one. So غشلو ملح. غشلو ملح. Literally, scatter salt for him. What can that mean?
To inflict pain.
Okay, to inflict pain, which corresponds to what we know from English, for example. So if you put salt on a wound or something like that, you provoke pain. But actually, this is not what it means in the
bad luck.
Baghdad. Sorry?
Bad luck.
Okay, bad luck. This
no, but
closer. Yeah.
Is it sort of the opposite?
Yeah.
Exactly.
But it's a way of warding off bad luck.
Exactly.
Like it's like Bliain Hara or something.
Yeah, exactly. So this is what it is. So in this tradition, yes, Barbara.
I bought a flat in Israel off an Iraqi guy and an old Iraqi man, and they left salt in the kitchen.
Exactly. So
I took it that it was something positive and not.
Yeah, it is positive. It is very positive. It is. So the Jewish Baghdadi tradition has a lot to do with the evil eye. How to prevent something bad from happening to you. So by scattering salt, you actually expel the evil eye. So when you say to somebody غشلو ملح, it means scatter salt for him in order to expel the evil eye of him. So this is what it means. It it is common not only in the Baghdadi, I would say, community or Iraqi community. It is a common belief, I would say, even of this region. Yeah. So this kind of traditions are found also in Turkey. Yeah, not necessarily by Jews. So they exist also beyond the Jewish world. Another one, this is difficult. Let's see who gets that. مطروق ينغادي صبولو رصاصاي. مطروق ينغادي صبولو رصاصاي. And I think Oded is laughing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but Oded, you will not be the one telling us what it is because you know what it is.
I expected that.
Yeah. So
I think it's a bit difficult for everybody to get the whole idea.
Yeah. This is very, very difficult. So literally it means a lead ball must be cast for a terrified person. Yeah. And another hint, it has also to do with the evil eye. Okay, so this is difficult. I'll give you a break. So another tradition by which the evil eye is expelled, I would say, is specifically it's a solution or a remedy when somebody gets scared or startled or has a, I don't know, has a bad dream or something like that, saw some bad images in his mind. So what the grandmothers used to do was they took a spoon, like you see here, they put lead balls, yeah, balls of lead on the spoon, and they will put them on top of the fire. Now these balls of lead would explode, yeah, so they would melt down, yeah, would melt down. Now this melted lead would then be put into a jar or like a ball with water, and when it meets the water, the melted lead, when it meets the bottle, the cold water, it explodes. Yeah, so it makes like an explosion reaction, and this stands for the explosion of the evil eye. Yeah, so this guy or man or woman or whatever that was startled or frightened, the evil eye that was flying on top of him or influencing him is now exploded. Yeah. So this is where this phrase comes. Yeah, and this again, this tradition is found not only in Jewish Iraqi culture but also around in Mesopotamia. The next one, I think this is quite easy. So, ديك المليح من بيضته يسيح. ديك المليح من بيضته يسيح. A good rooster chirps already in his egg. Yeah, that's easy. Look at the picture. Feel free to unmute yourself and say what you think.
Okay, so Brenda has said, written in the chat, you can tell from early on when someone is going to be a good person or a successful person.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, next one. الجمل لو عاين حدبته كان وقع وانكسرت ركبته. So if a camel could see his hump, he would fall and break his neck.
So maybe it's like if someone can see their own mistakes, they will be ashamed of them, I think.
Exactly, yeah. So before you criticize me, look at your own flaws, yeah? So if the camel could see his hump, he would fall and break his neck, yeah? So first, criticize yourself, then come and criticize me. Okay. This one, جحرين بفد البيس. Yeah. So 2 buttocks in a single underwear. What does this mean?
Very old and close friends.
Very good. Yeah, close friends. Very, very close friends. Friends that share everything with each other, even their underwear. Yeah. So.
And I was just wondering, because I'm seeing that Brenda wrote 2 peas in a pot. Is that the way to say it in English?
I think so. Yeah, but this is, I think, much more colorful. No?
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is the case here. What we call tzemet chemed in Hebrew. Yeah. Okay. مرات العام لو تشعل 10 صبيعة مثل الشميع وتمشي قدام كنتها هم تقول ظلمي. Okay, so this is a short story already. Even if a mother-in-law lit her 10 fingers like candles and walked ahead of her granddaughter, of her daughter-in-law, she would still say it's dark.
So it's the same old stereotype that a mother-in-law always has something to complain about her daughter-in-law.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is the about the relationship between a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law. Always bad, regardless to anything. Yeah, it will always be bad. No matter what, the relationship is going to be bad. This one, أنا أمير وأنت أمير من يسوق الحمير. Yeah, if you are a prince and I'm a prince, who would lead the donkeys? Yeah, any guess? That's not very difficult. So
Someone's put in the chat, I guess, I think.
Okay, what's in the chat? Can you tell me?
We have 2 things in the chat. Brenda says someone has to be in charge and someone has to do the dirty work.
Exactly. Yeah. So both are okay. Yeah. So if both of us think that we are above this task, yeah, or we shouldn't do that, then somebody at the end of the day should do that. Yeah. So don't think that you are above things. Yeah. So this is what it means here. This one, طول رجليك على قد فراشك or بساطك. Yeah, both are okay. Yeah, فراش or بساط. Extend your legs according to your bed or to your carpet. Yeah.
There's an expression in English, cut your coat according to your cloth.
Exactly. Yeah. So it is exactly the same thing, which means what?
That you can only work with what you've got.
Exactly. Yeah. Do things according to what you have. Yeah. With your abilities and what you have. Don't try to extend beyond that. Yeah. So this is more or less what it means. Yeah. Okay. Any question about the proverbs, idioms?
I think it was an amazing activity. Brenda, you want to say something?
No.
Oh, okay. I think it's an amazing activity, and I think sayings always tell you so much about the culture you're talking about or you're trying to learn about. So that was an amazing activity. I really liked it. Yeah, great fun, as I'm seeing from the chat. Asaf, maybe because it's a little bit late in Israel, and Oded just arrived a little while ago. Maybe it will be great if we can hear Oded. Sure. And then we can finish the whole session. So Oded, Baruch Haba. It's really nice to have you here. It's really a pleasure to have two speakers of Judeo-Arabic joining us today. And Professor Oded Amit is a teacher of Judeo-Arabic in Israel, born in Baghdad and immigrated to Israel. He teaches classical Arabic and Baghdadi Judeo-Arabic at different institutions around the country, such as Ramat Gan municipality. He speaks, sings, plays, and loves the language. So I would like to, we are very eager to listen to you, Oded, and to see what you have brought today to us.
Yeah, well, maybe first I'd like to tell you something about myself. I was born in Baghdad in 1947, and when most of the Jewish population of Iraq left in 1951, almost everybody left except for a few thousand Jews that were left behind out of their own choice, because they thought that the situation in Israel was too harsh. And we were a family with many, with three young babies, young children. So my parents decided to stay behind. And I grew up in Baghdad until I was 23. And I emigrated, actually, I escaped to Israel only in 1970 when I was 23 years old. Now, life in Iraq was depended very much on the ruler. We had some very difficult times, and we had some very good times, and mostly it was in between 1958 and 1963. We had a very enlightened ruler called Abdul Karim Qasim. It was very good to the Jews, but after there was a coup d'etat and he was killed, and we had many revolutions, one after the other, and eventually things became very difficult for the Jews. There were many laws against the Jews, especially, that didn't let us do much really, and especially after the 6-Day War in 1967, they didn't let us do anything. We couldn't leave the country, we couldn't work, we couldn't draw money from our bank accounts, we couldn't sell any property, and people were put in jail for no reason except for being Jewish. I was put in jail for a while as well, and the biggest tragedy was in 1969 when 9 innocent Jews were hanged in the public square of Baghdad, with hundreds of thousands of people dancing around their bodies. And later on, there were many more that were tortured to death in prison for no reason whatsoever. But eventually, thank God, we found a way out by escaping to Iran, which was then under the was governed by the Shah, who had good relationship with Israel. So once we were in Iran, we had to, to wait for a while until our papers were ready, and then we can come to Israel. So most of the small minority that was left in Iraq eventually came to Israel, mostly. Some of them also went to other countries, just like Asaf. I think his parents went to Canada, and a few more went to England, but most of us came to Israel. I'm a civil engineer by profession, and I worked a long time as my profession for the Standards Institute of Israel, almost 30 years. And later on, I went into early retirement and decided to do something about our beloved dialect, or language, if you like, that is slowly but surely disappearing, because most Jews from Iraqi origin stopped using this language at home, and we speak Hebrew. almost all the time, except when we meet friends who also left in 1970s and they still speak the language or inside our families. But our children, even my children, you know, they speak a little, but it has to disappear somehow. I'm trying my best. I teach Judeo-Arabic for grown-ups, mostly for second and third generation Israelis who come from Iraqi origin. I do that. I had many courses, many places, and I also write some songs in Judeo-Arabic, also made some sketches. I have a lot of hobbies. I sing in Iraqi, Judeo-Arabic. I also am an actor. I took part in a few movies that relate to this, our question. I hope maybe you've heard about the Dove Flyer. That's a movie that is where Judeo-Arabic is spoken, and I had a little part in the movie, and I was also like I helped the director in many questions about Iraq that I'm like I remembered, and most of the others did not. I was like my information was very fresh, and also helped some of the actors to speak our dialect, which was difficult for them. Especially there was one actor who had to speak not in Judeo-Arabic but in Muslim Iraqi Arabic, which is a different story altogether. So I speak that dialect as well because I live there, so I know how. So I spent many hours with him trying to teach him, and he did very nice work. And now what I do, I teach Judeo-Arabic. I also teach regular classical Arabic and spoken Arabic, and that's what I do most of the time. And I'm very happy to join you, and maybe you'd like to ask me questions about what I went through in my life. And Vittorio asked me to tell you maybe a few jokes and sing to you in Judeo-Arabic, and I gladly do that. Okay.
So there's a song that you might share with us. Oh, there's a question from Anne, and maybe there's a song that it's called like Only Yesterday, Racket Mall.
Yes, I sang that I wrote the song. It's like a autobiographical song. It's based on a song of Charles Aznavour, the French singer that I really is my idol, and I think you can put it on here. But I prepared another funny song that
Oh, perfect. Whatever you have prepared is amazing. So let's just listen to Anne has another question, and maybe after that we can listen to your song. We're really looking forward to listen to more Judeo-Arabic. So yes, Anne.
Thank you so much for being here and sharing some of your story. I guess I wonder, because all of us in different ways have ups and downs and challenges in life.
Yeah.
What were things that helped you to maintain hope when things were really bad in Iraq and you were stuck there and going through all those tragedies? Does my question make sense?
A very good question, actually. And you know, and I've been through, like we've been through some very difficult times, especially since 1967. And sometimes I think, how did I remember the time when I was in jail. I was with another 6 guys. And what is happening, like I learned from this experience, then even in the worst of times, it's got, I can't compare our hardships to what the Jews in Europe went through in the Holocaust. Of course, this is really very marginal, and although, a lot of Jews in Iraq were killed or hanged, still, like most of the population, the minority did get through, and thank God. And the thing is, it depends, sometimes even when times are very, very difficult, you find ways to get along. I mean, when I was in jail, and after a while, we were 6 of us together in that room, and we were getting bored, although we were getting questioned the whole time. So we decided to make a board of backgammon. This sheshbesh. I don't know if you know the game. So we had the pieces of paper. So we made, like, I don't know if you know this game. You have one against the other, and you have like 15 tokens with different color. One is white, the other one is dark. So we took pieces of paper and made 15 for each side, and then we had to have dice, and we didn't have dice. How can you make dice out of, like, you can draw the board on the ground? So what we did was we took the like bread, the inside of the bread, and made it into a dice, and put dots on it. So even like when you don't have anything, you can still think of how to make yourself at ease and happy. And always we had hope. Like my late father, God rest his soul, he used to say, when it becomes very difficult, this is a very good sign. That means once it's very, very difficult, then afterwards there must be an answer. And you try to be optimistic even in the hardest times. What I did and was really, really crazy in that times, where Jews were put in jail like nothing, killed and all that. I was there. I couldn't work. I couldn't do anything. So what I did, I made a group of 5 people, including me, and we made a band. We had a band. And we sat down in our friend's basement, and we had 4 guitars and a drum, and we practiced for months on end, whenever we can. So like every time 5-6 hours we go and practice, and then we started to perform for Jews who still had children and bar mitzvah and all that. Very few occasions, but we were there, and actually, as far as I'm concerned, the music made me, maintain my sanity, and made me like it was wonderful to have something to think about and work with. So that was my answer. Thank God nobody really became crazy or anything. So eventually, when there was this hope started in 1969, that people started to just flee to the north and somehow get to Iran. So little by little, we became very optimistic, and eventually we made it out. I think I read also a book about, I'm not sure about, I think his name was Frankel or something like that, like the guy who was in the Holocaust, and even at that very, very impossible time, he would find something to make him go through that and still become sane. This is a human gift that under the most difficult circumstances, you can still find a way to go through and eventually get out, or not. Sometimes it doesn't work, but you cannot go just sit and mope and cry, and you have to do something to make yourself more, more optimistic.
Thank you very much, Oded. So you were telling us that you are going to sing us a song that you compose yourself?
Yes, yes, I composed a few songs in Judeo-Arabic. Most of them are funny. There is a song that there are many corrupt politicians in Israel, I'm sorry to say, and once I wrote a song about those, and it's very well, everybody likes that. But I wrote a song about women, which is I wrote it to the music of a very lovely song by Jose Feliciano. It's called Kcra. Okay, now I'll sing it to you a little in my Judeo-Arabic, and then I'll explain it. I translate it into English, if you like. So the song goes like that. البنات 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 والنبي حي وياهم للبنات اش ما تسلم اش ما تسلم اش ما تظل سلم. Sorry, I forgot the words. اسمع. Now start again. البنات 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 والنبي حي وياهم البنات اش ما تجرب اش ما تسايل اش ما تظل تبقى كتبات ابد ما تفهم للبنات. البنات are girls, the girls are women. Okay, I'm very mixed up about women. It doesn't matter how much you have experience and how much you ask other people and how much you read, you'll never understand women. Okay, now I'll read the first bite. ميلاد شدك بيغي جبتولا أكبر مطعم كشخة طلعنا وغنولا بس بالنص قامت زعلانة قول الواحد يضحك تولا وجيبوا اللي يطلع من هيك الورطات. ميلاد شدك بيغي جبتولا, and her birthday I brought her very big flower, beautiful flowers for her birthday. أكبر مطعم كشخة طلعنا وغنولا. I took her to a very fancy restaurant and they sang for her. بس بالنص قامت زعلانة. In the middle she stood up and she was very angry. تقول الواحد يضحك تولا. She claimed that I was smiling at another woman. Okay. جيبوا اللي يطلع من هيك الورطات. And what can I do? It's such a big problem. I cannot get out of these problems. I'll read to you another one. كبابام يا يوم الجمعة طبخت لي قلت لها عشتي دك طيبي قالت لي لكن لازم تقلل امك هي ما تكمى مثلي وجيبوا اللي يطلع من هيك الورطات. Kebabamia, it's an Iraqi dish. It's very well known. يوم الجمعة طبخت لي. She made it on Friday, and قلت لها عشتي دك طيبي. I told her, wow, it is very good. But she answered me, okay, but you have to tell your mother I'm a better cook than she is. Okay? So what can I do? How can I do to get over the women? So it goes on and on, like complaining how I'm trying to understand women. There is no way you can do that. So this is like something that I wrote, and I enjoy doing this. I play a little guitar, and as a the hobby, not as a professional. I enjoy doing that. I cannot hear you, my dear.
Excellent, Shkoyach, really interesting. It's always nice to listen to new things that are being done in a language that it's endangered. So it is amazing to listen to this translation. And would you like to tell us a joke perhaps, or something like that? And maybe we can wrap it up with that. So
okay.
Because we could be here for a long, long time, but I know that some of you will have been here for 2 hours. So, but we're really looking forward to listen to a couple of more things and then maybe to finish our session.
Okay, I'll tell you a joke. Sometimes, you know, there are performances that I do, you know, with a lot of my, there's a group, by the way, it's preserving the Iraqi language, it's called, and it's got some 70,000 members. And we have like gatherings and like we take a big hall and we do all kinds of things that connected with the Iraqi dialect. And many times I take part in these performances. So there is a joke. I'll just say it in English because I think, you know, it's not worthwhile you saying it in Iraqi dialect, because I imagine that most of you would not understand it. So there is this guy, he went into a fancy restaurant, and the waiter came and gave him the menu. He said, tell me, do you have some old stuff, you know, that going to throw away, old food? That he said, yes. He said, can you bring me something?
Wait a second, I think you are muted, Odette, so if you can unmute yourself. And yeah.
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, now where did I stop being heard? Anyway, this guy, he asked for, you know, very, you know, bad food. The waiter was, you know, he didn't understand this guy. He said, are you sure this is what you want? He said, yes. So I brought him, and he was eating this stale bread and all that. When he finished, he asked for the menu again. The waiter came and said, I'd like to have the best steak you have in the house. He said, okay. So he went to brought him that big steak, and the guy ate it all up. So the waiter, you know, said, you know, can you please explain to me what we are doing? First of all, you eat this bad food and then the best food. He said, I just came from the doctor, and he said I have worms in my stomach. First of all, I want them to eat the bad food, and then I'll get the good food for myself. I'm not sure. Now, I tell you something else. Okay.
But in
like,
Judeo-Baghdadi, please, we want to hear.
You want to hear it? Okay. فد وحدي مرة كبيري. I'll explain while I'm taking. Like this is elderly woman. وحدي مرة كبيري طلعت من الحمام. She went out of the bathroom. وقفت قبال المري. She stood in front of the mirror. وقد عين لوحة. She was watching herself, and she was very sad. كلش كانت مقهورة. قالت وجهي هيك كله مجرجر. My face has got a lot of scars and all that. My feet are جودي سمان. My feet are very thick and I'm very fat and all that. And she was, you know, just glooming, and her husband was sitting on the bed watching her. She asked him, سألته ما عندك شيء مليح تقول علي? Don't you have anything good to say about me? قال لا عيونك ستي على ستي. You have a very good eye view. Got that?
I think it was amazing to listen to it in both languages. Thank you so much. And maybe we can finish our session before we open the breakout rooms for people if just want to hang out in a Jewish language that they might speak. And maybe we can finish a session with us with another song. For example, well, the song that you will like, any song that you would like to share with us in Judeo-Arabic, or if like one song that people that know almost nothing about Baghdadi Judeo-Arabic cannot miss, or one song that you want to share with us. It's really up to you.
Okay, I'll sing to you this song. It's based on a folk music known for they use it in sometimes while you're praying. It's got and it's about the corrupt Israeli politicians. Okay, starting I'm sure you know about what the president of Israel, Moshe Kcra, he was accused of sexual harassment and rape and all that. So it made me really sad that it was like this. And so I wrote this song about him and some few others that really did not give us a lot of respect. So a song goes like that, and I'll explain it to you afterwards, okay? هاي شلون صبيغي وهاي شلون بلي بس يوصلون للحكم يطلعون صرصري هاي شلون صبيغي هاي شلون بلي. What a big problem, what a big disaster. Once they come to power, it turns out that they are corrupt. Okay? هاي شلون صبيغي هاي شلون بلي بس يوصلون للحكم يطلعون صرصري رئيسنا موشي قصاب اشلون سوى بحالنا اش قد فضحنا بينه قلنا هذا مالنا هيك يطلع ادبسز ابد ما عبالنا هيك يطلع ادبسز ابد ما عبالنا لو يطهون وبلاخ لا يجيك خطيه. Okay, رئيسنا موشي قصاب, our president Moshe Kcra, أشلون سوى بحالنا. What he did to us, he gave us so much pain. أش قد فرحنا بينه, we were so happy with him. قلنا هذا منا, he's one of us, like he's Persian, he's almost Iraqi. هيك يطلع أدبسز أبد ما عبالنا. It turned out that he's such a corrupt person. We never thought about that. If we give him another Brit Milah, don't worry about him. We shouldn't be sad about him, okay? And then I'll give you another ولا أخي أولمرت الكبير فر الاستقالة أشقد ما هو زنجين عينه على كمالة هيك يطلع هميني سافر ببلاش همي غيد دلالة هميني سافر ببلاش همي غيد دلالة حسبالنا صدنا بز وطالع جغي. Okay, now we're talking about Ehud Olmert. He was our prime minister, and he was also turned out he was also corrupt. So هذا أولمرت الكبير, big, high person, Olmert, for الاستقالة, he resigned. أشقد ما هو زنجين عينه على كمالة. It doesn't matter how wealthy he is. He always needed more and more, wanted more money. هماني سافر ببلاش همي غير دلالة. He used to fly for free because he was a prime minister, but it turned out that he went back to the travel agency and he asked for miles, because of his travel. That was what he was accused of. I'm not sure it was true, but that's what they said. حسبنا صدنا بز. We thought that we, caught a very big, tasty fish. And it turned out to be a very small fish that cannot be eaten. And it goes on and on for the rest of people that were very much, were not happy with them. But the people, I always say it's like a modular song. You can always put in more people if you like.
Yes, unfortunately, you're right. You can always add people to the list. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I always find amazing that in all of these languages there are things being produced, and it's very important also to listen to those new things. So, Shkoyach, I don't know how you say thank you. Well done to both of you, and thank you so much to Dr. Asaf and to Oded. Thank you very much.
I also would like to congratulate you for this wonderful initiative. You know, when I was telling my friends that I'm going, you know, to be on the Yiddish house, they didn't understand what the Yiddish house to do with Judeo-Arabic, but I really congratulate you for it.
Thank you so much. I think we are eager to learn about other Jewish languages as grassroots organizations that cares about Yiddish. I think it's important to have a dialogue with other Jewish languages, and that's really important. And I just want to remind a couple of people that were not here today, but that made this possible. Well, first of all, we have the support from the Memorial Foundation for Jewish Culture, and this is being made by the Yiddish House London with together with Arturo, who is here, Arturo Kerbel, Germán, and Tali Margolis. And thank you very much, both of you. It was an amazing session. We got to learn from the history to some like a tale in Judeo-Arabic, and then some expressions and sayings, and at the end to hear from you your story, and also to hear your compositions. It was a really unique experience, and so thank you so much. So next session is our Hebrew session, and we will be looking at the history of Hebrew, which is really complex, and it's a thousand years old story. And we're also going to have like an artistic section, like a section, and some sayings and so on. And after that, the week after, it's going to be our Yiddish session. We're going to have, by the end of the Yiddish session, a Hanukkah party. And the Hanukkah party is going to include, and by the way, Oded, if you know a Hanukkah song in Judeo-Arabic, we have not been able to find any, well, we don't know any of them. So the person who will come, Batsheva, she will be singing in Hebrew, Ladino, Yiddish, but not in Judeo-Arabic. So if you know one, that will be amazing. So that's going to be our Yiddish Hanukkah party. And the last session is going to be a Ladino session. So we're going to learn about the history of Ladino. Then, so the one who will be leading the session will be Miriam Moscona, who she's a writer, she's a poet in Ladino. So she'll be explaining us about Ladino, and she'll be also reading from her own poetry. And now that I am mentioning Miriam Moscona, I must also say that for our Yiddish session, Bruria will be with us, Bruria Vigan, and she will read her own poetry in Yiddish. So that's going to be great. So thank you so much. Toda rabah. And if you can, I know that as I learned from Asaf, you don't say very much, thank you very much, but I would like to say it in Arabic, in Judeo-Arabic. So maybe you can teach us that, or Asaf, how to say thank you very much again.
Kcra.
Okay.